There is a cave on a volcanic island in the middle of the Aegean Sea. It is small. The walls are black rock. There is barely enough room for a man to lie down. The year is approximately AD 95. The Roman emperor on the throne is a man named Domitian, and Domitian has declared himself Dominus et Deus, Lord and God. He means this literally. He is having people executed for disagreeing. In this cave is an old man. His name is John. You may know him as the disciple whom Jesus loved, the one who stood at the foot of the cross when everyone else had run. He is now in his 90s. He has survived things that would have broken most men 50 years earlier. And Rome has decided that the safest thing to do with him is to put him on an island in the middle of the sea, surrounded by water on every side, and let him disappear. But something is about to happen in this cave that will echo for 2,000 years. John is praying. It is the Lord's day, what we would call Sunday. And then, without warning, the world behind his eyes opens up. He sees a throne. He sees a lamb, standing as though it had been slain. He sees a scroll sealed with 7 seals. And he is told, no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth is worthy to open this scroll. No one. And then the Lamb takes it. And as each seal breaks open, what pours out is not light, not music, not angels singing. What pours out is a rider on a horse. 4 of them. 4 colors. 4 assignments. Now, before we ride, I have to tell you something. There is a Greek word in Revelation chapter 6 that most English Bibles mistranslate. It is a single word. It describes the color of the 4th horse. And when you understand what it actually means, you will never read this passage the same way again. We will get there, but not yet. Because first, you need to understand something that most people who talk about the 4 Horsemen get completely wrong. This is not a horror movie script. This is not a conspiracy theory for people building bunkers. This is not a prophecy sealed away for some distant century when you and I are long gone. This is a letter, written by a very old man in a very small cave, to very real people who were already being killed for their faith. And every single symbol John used, every horse, every color, every rider, meant something specific to those people, something they recognized immediately. If you want to understand the horseman, you have to start there. Let's start with what you can see. A white horse, a rider holding a bow, a crown placed on his head, and he rides out, conquering and to conquer. Your first instinct might be, this sounds like a good thing. White usually means something good in the Bible. The rider of the white horse in Revelation chapter 19 is Jesus himself, coming in final judgment. So who is this white rider in chapter 6? Here's what most people miss. This rider has a bow, but no arrows are mentioned. He has a crown, but the word used is stephanos, the crown of victory, the athletic winner's wreath, not the crown of a king. The crown of someone who has just won a competition. And the Greek word for conquering, it is nikon, from Nike, the same word printed on the side of your running shoes. Victriumph, triumphance. This is not a warrior covered in blood returning from a battlefield. This rider is clean. He looks like a liberator. He looks like the answer everyone has been waiting for. That, John is telling his readers, is exactly the danger. Think about what John's original audience had just watched. They had watched a man named Nero convince an empire that he was divine, and then set his own city on fire and blame it on Christians. They had watched a parade of emperors, each one more brutal than the last, each one crowned with the rhetoric of peace and the reality of conquest. Josephus, the Jewish historian who survived the Roman siege of Jerusalem, describes what came after each Roman liberation. First the soldiers, then the famine, then the plague, in that order, every time. The white rider does not arrive carrying a sword. He arrives with a crown and a bow and the posture of a savior. You have seen this before. maybe not on a horse, maybe in a speech, maybe in a headline, maybe in a system that promised to solve a problem and quietly became the problem itself. The white rider is Conquest wearing the costume of peace. And the moment that seal breaks, the moment that rider is released, something else is set in motion, because the four horses do not ride separately, they ride in sequence. Each one makes room for the next. White opens the door. Now watch what happens when red walks through it. Another horse. Fiery red. And its rider is given something extraordinary. He is given permission to take peace from the earth, so that people would kill one another. That phrase. Read it carefully. He is given permission by the Lamb, the same Lamb who opened the first seal. The red rider does not break loose. He is released. This is not chaos escaping a locked room. This is a door being opened by nail-scarred hands. Why would the Lamb do that? John's readers understood. They were living in a world where the peace of Rome, the famous Pax Romana, the Roman peace, was enforced by crucifixion. It was peace purchased with blood and maintained with terror. It was a peace that protected the powerful and crushed the weak. And God, John is saying, is not impressed with it. The Hebrew word shalom means more than the absence of war. It means wholeness, completeness, every relationship in right order, every need met, every wound healed. That is the specific thing the Red Rider removes from the earth, not just ceasefire. The whole architecture of wholeness, and in its place, people killing one another. The Greek here is not the language of armies going to war on a foreign field. It is the language of neighbors, of communities, of people who once shared bread now lifting weapons against each other. Civil fracture. Sectarian violence. The kind of killing that starts with words and ends with fire. But it gets stranger. John is writing this in a world where Christians are being executed for their faith. Pliny the Younger, a Roman governor writing in AD 112, describes Christians in his province being brought before him for execution, not for crimes, but for refusing to curse the name of Christ. These were John's people. These were the ones reading his letter by lamplight. And the Red Rider does not distinguish between the guilty and the innocent. Peace is removed from the earth, not from the enemies of God, not from the corrupt empire, not from the people who deserve it, from everywhere, from your village, from your family, from the street you walk down every morning. You want to ask, when does this happen? And the uncomfortable answer is that it has already happened. It is happening. Josephus, describing the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70, writes not only of Roman soldiers breaching the walls, but of factions within the city tearing each other apart, neighbor against neighbor, as the siege closed in and hope ran out. That is what the second seal releases into the world. Not a distant war on a screen you can turn off. The breakdown of the ground under your feet. Stay with me, because the rider behind the red one is carrying something far more subtle, far more precise, a scale, a black horse. And the rider holds a pair of scales, the kind you would find in any first-century marketplace, the kind used to weigh grain. Then a voice speaks. From the middle of the four living creatures around the throne, a disembodied voice says, "A quart of wheat for a denarius. 3 quarts of barley for a denarius. But do not damage the oil and the wine." If you were a citizen of the Roman Empire in AD 95, you understood exactly what this meant. A denarius was a full day's wage. 1 quart of wheat was the amount one person needed to survive for 1 day. So the third seal produces a world where a man works a full day and earns enough to feed himself. Not his children, not his wife, just himself. 1 person, 1 meal. But here is the detail that shatters everything. Do not damage the oil and the wine. Oil and wine were luxury goods. They required land, labor, infrastructure, connections. They were the province of the wealthy, and even inside the Black Rider's famine, even while common people cannot feed their families, the oil is untouched. The wine is protected. This is not just famine. This is a specific kind of famine. The kind where food exists, but the poor cannot reach it. The kind where the system continues to function perfectly for those at the top, while the people at the bottom slowly disappear. Pay attention to this. Irenaeus, writing in AD 180, described the Black Rider as the spirit of covetousness and injustice made visible, not a single catastrophic event, but a pattern woven into human civilization. Every generation, in every culture, the scales appear. And always, always, the oil and the wine are protected. You have seen the Black Rider. He does not arrive on fire. He arrives on numbers, on commodity prices, on supply chains functioning exactly as designed, on the quiet precision of a market that knows what a quart of wheat is worth and prices, just beyond the reach of the people who need it most. The third horseman does not announce himself. He sends a receipt. And none of the three, not the White Rider, not the Red Rider, not the Black Rider, none of them are what John is most afraid to describe. That is the fourth one. And there is a word for what color that horse is, a word that changes everything. Your English Bible probably says pale horse. That is not wrong, but it is not the whole picture. The Greek word John uses is chloros. You may recognize it. It is the root of our word chlorophyll, the green pigment in plants. In the ancient Greek world, chloros described the color of living vegetation going sickly, the color of a wound that has not healed, the color of skin when blood has stopped moving beneath it, the green-gray of flesh in the early stages of decay, not yet dead, but no longer fully alive. It is not the ghostly white of a Halloween costume. It is not the pale gray of a black and white photograph. It is the color of things that are dying but have not yet died, the color of something that was alive a moment ago and is now becoming something else. John calls this horse Chloros, and its rider's name is Death, not a symbol of death. Not death-like. His name is Death. And here is the part nobody tells you. The other three riders are not named in the text. We give them names based on what they carry and what they do. But the fourth rider has a name explicitly given to him by John himself, Death. And behind him, following in his wake, like a shadow that has learned to walk, is another figure, Hades, the realm of the dead, personified, following like a second rider on the same terrible horse. Death is given authority over 1/4 of the earth, to kill by sword, by famine, by plague, by the wild beasts of the earth. Those 4 instruments are not chosen randomly. They are the 4 judgments God warned Israel about in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 14. John's readers heard that reference land. They felt the weight of it. Now, here is where this stops being ancient history and becomes something else. Think about the last time you were in a waiting room, not the kind where you wait for a number to be called, the kind where someone is going to come through a door and tell you something that changes the shape of everything. Maybe it was a hospital corridor. Maybe it was a phone that rang at an unusual hour. Maybe it was a conversation you knew was coming but kept hoping would not come. You were not waiting for an announcement. You were not waiting for a trumpet. You were sitting in a fluorescent room, and something was happening behind a closed door that you had no control over. That is what Chloros means. Death does not knock. Death does not announce itself on a news ticker. It rides a horse the color of things already in process. By the time you recognize the color clearly, it has been moving for a while, but now, here is where the open loop closes. Here is where everything reframes. John is an old man in a cave. He has watched friends die. He has watched communities scatter. He has watched the empire consume everything it touches. He has been exiled to a volcanic island in the middle of a dark sea. And in the vision, he watches these four riders released one by one, conquest, conflict, death, riding in sequence, each one making the next possible. And you would expect at this moment for John to fall apart. But the riders are not what John is watching most closely. He is watching the Lamb, the one who opens the seals, the one with the scroll in his hands, and the Lamb is not surprised. He is not reacting. He is not scrambling to regain control of something that has escaped him. He opens the seals himself, deliberately, one by one. This is not a God who has lost control of history. This is not a universe where evil escapes and goodness limps behind trying to catch up. This is not a story about how terrible things happen when no one is watching. This is a God who sees the whole scroll, every seal, every rider, every chapter of every century of human history, and who is found by every angel, by every creature, by every elder in the vision, to be the only one worthy to hold it. So what do you do with the four horsemen? Not in a movie, not in a prophecy chart, in your actual life, in the world you wake up in tomorrow morning. Three things. Three things to take with you. The first, the four horsemen are not a prediction. They are a diagnosis. John was not assembling a sequence of future events to be unlocked with the right calendar and the right newspaper. He was holding a mirror up to the way empires collapse, to the way conquest leads to conflict, leads to famine, leads to death. That pattern has repeated in every century since Babylon. It was repeating when John wrote it. It is repeating now. The horsemen are not coming. They have always been riding. The second, John wrote to people who were al-Ri inside the ride. The Christians reading this letter in the 1st century, they were not watching the end times from a safe distance. They were in it. Their friends were dead. Their churches were scattered. Their world belonged to Domitian. And John says to them, "You are not forgotten. You are not lost. The God who holds the whole scroll sees you," on page 11, in the middle of everything, in a world that looks like it is coming apart, and he is not surprised. That means something for you, if you are in the middle of something right now. If it feels like a seal has broken over your life, like peace has been taken, like the scale is tipped against you, like the color of things around you is chloros, like something is dying and you cannot stop it. You are not outside the story, you are inside it. And the one who holds the story has already read the last page, the third takeaway, the one that matters most. The Lamb opens the seals, not the horseman, not the empire, not history. The Lamb, the one who was slain and stood again, the one with wounds that did not close, the one found worthy when no one else was, is the one with the scroll in his hands. Every rider released is released by nail-scarred hands. Every chapter of history, every century of conquest and collapse and famine and plague, every moment of chloros, all of it moves inside a story held by someone who chose to die so that the ending could be different. The horsemen are real, the riders are real, the ride is real. But the Lamb holds the scroll. Which of the four horsemen do you think the world is closest to right now? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this video opened something in you, if you want to go deeper into what John saw on that volcanic island in the dark, subscribe. Because we are just beginning to understand what is written on those pages. The cave on Patmos is dark, but the light that filled it was not from the sun.